This was our first adventure trek to the base camp of Himalayan peak. Annapurna Base Camp trek passes through beautiful villages and dense forests to end at the Annapurna glaciers with a trek distance of 45 km. We had a thrilling flight from Delhi to Kathmandu.
In the morning, through the windows of our room, the horizon revealed a welcome scene. Clouds cleared up, and beyond the ridge of the hill that lay in front, Mount Machapuchare Fishtail was peeping out in its full glory. After our breakfast, we headed towards Kumi, the point from where we started our trek. The road moved towards the outskirts of the Pokhara town. As we entered the highway, the entire stretch of it lay before us. The beautiful Modi Khola river thundering down through the slopes and rocks in leaps and bounds. Its water was azure, shining brightly in the morning sun. We crossed a bridge to reach the town Ulleri. Ulleri is the first place where our permits were checked. It is the first doorstep to enter the Annapurna Conservation Area project, the protected area in the national park that covers the entire region in and around Annapurna Massif. Ulleri is also the place from where different trekking routes start. One such route is the one that goes to Poon Hill. Our road didn't cover Poon Hill, and we were to go via Kumi, Jhinu Danda to converge with the Poon Hill route at Chomrong, after which the route was common. It was about 10:30 a.m. The path moved along the slopes amidst the forest. In spite of the sunshine, it wasn't very hot, and mainly because we were walking under the shades of a canopy formed by our hovering trees. The Annapurna Base Camp trail is known to have forests over a majority of its sections, and we were only going through the lowlands now. The trail started descending towards a metallic suspension bridge, which was almost 1 kilometer in length. This bridge was an amazing sight for capturing moments, which for us lasted for a long time. After a few steps, we reached Jhinu Danda. This was the place where we had our lunch. After the lunch, we headed for Chomrong. Through the steep path, it did appear daunting at first sight, as the stairs seemed never-ending that went upwards, turning through multiple bends to ascend further up. After crossing another few bends and a few steps ahead, lay the lodge of Chomrong, our destination for the day. We woke up at 4 a.m. The sky started to assume some brightness. The peaks of the Annapurna range were peeping from behind the hills. The menu for breakfast included butter toast, mashed potatoes, omelette or boiled eggs, and a cup of tea or coffee. After some time, the trail reached the top of a hill. We came across the office of Annapurna Conservation Area project. It was the second time on this trail our permits got checked. Beyond that, there were steps going downhill. Terraced fields covered the slopes on both sides of the gorge. The steps went down through a maze of lanes between the lodge and village homes to the bank of the river. After that, there was a hanging wire bridge. Beyond it, on the other bank, the stairs moved up the slopes and the trail disappeared behind the bushes. On our way, we crossed the huts and lodges of Lower Sinua, and finally at about 12 p.m. we reached Upper Sinua and had our lunch. The surrounding forest was filled with bamboo shoots of a thin variety which were markedly different from their daily thick counterparts that get used in daily life. After a few bends, we came across a herd of goats and sheep. They were all over the place, up on the hills, down the slopes, between the bamboo trees, almost everywhere around, feeding on bamboo leaves and shoots. The atmosphere was filled with their bleats. After crossing the herd, we came across a series of steps that descended downwards. We came across a board that declared that we were finally at the premises of Bamboo, our destination for the day. Evening at the lodges are normally spent at the dining hall. They always buzz with travelers from all over the world. The lodge was full of travelers, much more than its capacity, and there was a shortage of blankets. We'd have to adjust, and our sleeping bags would have to complement. Trekkers who were on their way down revealed that the trail after MBC, Mt Base Camp, had received fresh snowfall and the route was covered with snow. That was disturbing as we weren't carrying crampons. When I woke up, it was dark outside. Bathing was out of the list since Chomrong. Bread toast, eggs, and ginger tea made for a heavy breakfast. The day would see us reach Deorali, just beyond the tree line. The track left the premises of the lodge, heading towards the dense forest of bamboo trees. Chirps of the birds grew as we walked along the trail. The forest was waking up. After some time, we reached a waterfall. As others crossed it, we watched them carefully to identify the boulders that were stable enough to bear our weights. In about 1.5 hours, we reached Dovan. The elevation increased and the steps reappeared. We reached Himalaya at about 12 p.m., just about right time for lunch. We were to reach as early as there were high chances of rain. At a point, mountains on both sides and their slopes strewn with rocks and debris that came down almost like a river from the top, which was beyond our views. Thanks to the mist, it was a sight of huge landslide. The river Modikola thundered down in leaps and bounds through the gorge, foaming like milk. Finally, Deorali was in sight. Here, tea houses are the main backbone of such trekking routes in Nepal. They make it possible to venture into these remote lands. Wi-Fi was available and dinner was served at 6:30 p.m. as for all days. The morning wasn't different than any other day. The cold was biting hot. We were reminded that we were getting closer to her feet. The set-top breakfast proved filling. As we moved out of the reaches of Deorali, we entered into a valley that was guarded on both sides by tall mountains. We were engrossed in looking at Fishtail, but a signboard that stood beside the trail read clear and loud that we were traversing a rockfall zone. It caused us to expedite. The snow-clad peaks dazzled in bright sunshine. It was a wonderful contrast of colors and was a treat to eyes. After some time, we found ourselves in the mid of a wonderful valley with a charming river flowing through it. Bright rays of the sun poured gold in its waters and it danced its way towards Deorali. Even the glaciers at MBC were visible. We kept moving up the bends and finally reached the base of MBC. Machapuchare was standing high in front of our eyes. Soon, clouds started making their way into the valley, and it even started to snow. The afternoon moved ahead with clouds hanging around. It was still snowing hard in the evening. After getting ourselves ready, we headed for breakfast. Gradually, the line of darkness started moving down the slopes of Annapurna South and Annapurna Main, and they were crowned with gold. Successive snaps were taken. As we started the trek, we saw slopes covered with yellow bushes that were dotted by rocks and boulders. The river was making its way through the rocks, which had icicles hanging from their edges. Snow-covered mountains were visible from all sides. On our left, Mount Hyunchuli stood upright beyond the edges of the nearby hills. The trail was now completely covered with the snow and we had to be careful with our steps. The weather was deteriorating fast. The sunshine was gone. Clouds hovered above. Just about then, we reached the premises of the Annapurna Base Camp, which had a few signboards declaring the name along with some welcome messages. The place didn't resemble a base camp in its literal terms, rather appeared as a place of halt, no different than the ones we came through from down below. Tourists are advised to carry sleeping bags and enough warm clothing with them to adapt to situations when blankets aren't available. After we got ourselves settled in the lodge, it started snowing outside. The entire lodge premises was painted white in no time, though we enjoyed it from the warmth of the dining hall. At about 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon, the temperature outside was -4 degrees Celsius. Gradually, the Fishtail Peak and the surrounding range of mountains and glaciers now appeared clear and white. At evening, the thermometer at the dining hall read -6 degrees. At about 2 or 3 a.m., there were some movements in the rooms. Full moon was already nearby, and we didn't want to waste the opportunity to witness the moonlit views of the Annapurna range. All of that and the surrounding mountains were placed against a pitch dark background of clear sky dotted with numerous stars. The moon was in the sky behind us in full glory, showering its light on the Annapurna range, which we were looking at. We started preparing at 4 a.m. The sky started to acquire a tinge of blue. After some time, Annapurna South was the first to get the showers of gold. As the sun changed its position, the crown spread its influence on the surrounding peaks of Annapurna range, almost like a wildfire. What we saw and hence was imprinted on our minds and hearts can never be depicted by the snaps. There was no trace of land that wasn't colored white. On our way down, we tried to walk along the edges of the trail which had some grass and pebbles that could offer some grip as opposed to walking down the middle which had already turned slippery. Nevertheless, we slipped a few times. We stopped for breakfast at Deorali. After a few steps from Deorali, the forests reappeared. By the time we reached Himalaya for lunch, it was raining. After it subsided somewhat at Dovan, we resumed our journey. We started from EBC at 7 am and after 10 hours, we reached Bamboo at 5 pm. From Bamboo, there is a hike to Upper Cinema, though the slope is relatively gentle. The trail beyond it goes down the staircases to the hanging bridge to reach the lower Chomrong, and then comes the long hike to Upper Chomrong. Finally, we started moving down the stairs that led us to Jhinu Danda. In short, it was a topsy-turvy trail. People enjoyed their lunch. After that, we ventured out for the hot spring. It was a downhill walk for about 20 minutes. The lukewarm pool water gave the warmth and comfort to drain away all the stress and pain of the trail.